Hey everyone, welcome to another NLP Insider Live show, and thank you so much for joining us. We will be here live every other week for 15 minutes to talk about everything NLP with industry leaders. I'm David Albi, CTO of John Snow Labs, and today I'm very excited to welcome Parisa Naraei, CEO of Executive AI and a business and tech strategist. She's on a mission to improve lives by transforming health data into strong health policy empowered by trusted and reliable AI. Parisa will tell us more about the importance of AI governance and how leadership can help contribute to it. Welcome, Parisa.
Hello, David. Thanks for having me, and I'm very pleased to be here with you and the audience.
I'm excited to have you here. So let's jump right in. Please share your background. How and why did you get to work on AI and machine learning?
A lot of my background actually lies into the intersection of how actually artificial intelligence can be in support of human and human lives. I completed a PhD in this field, and my thesis was mainly involved in developing advanced AI techniques and models in support of the healthcare system. And moving from there, it was a lot about thinking about how these models can be applied at scale and in support of businesses and technologies in various organizations in Canada. That is the hub of a lot of this development across the world. So that's where I started, and this journey on the leadership is growing every single day. I'm actually enjoying the journey.
Yeah, it's definitely fun times to be in AI, yes, and healthcare, I think. Yep. So
Excellent.
you've been recognized by VentureBeat as one of Canada's women leaders in AI. In your
Yes.
opinion, what makes a great leader in AI?
Well, thanks for acknowledging that. I appreciate it.
Well
What
deserved.
makes what makes a great leader in AI? I think a great leader in any field is someone who has a vision for the field, knows where it should be headed, and is able to detect the care and the status of the organization or the environment that he or she is working at, and is able to provide some sort of plan in terms of what it takes to go from point A to all the way to point B, where the target or the destination is lying. So I think it has a lot with that understanding and ability to recognize and detect where we are today and where we should be heading, and what that journey is going to look like, and also being able to uplift the peers and the organizations through the path as well. So it's not only about talking the talk, but it's also about walking the walk, I think.
Yeah,
That's what I call qualifications of a good leader, for sure.
that makes a lot of sense. And you've been talking a lot about AI governance. Can you tell us what is it all about and why does it matter?
AI governance, well, it's the whole umbrella, the greater umbrella that is supposed to kind of guide the whole life cycle of AI development. Starts from the data collection part, metadata collection part, all the way to algorithm training, choice of the algorithm, hyperparameters tuning, and why those hyperparameters has been chosen, all the way to how the model has been deployed and how it has been monitored after the deployment. So it's really about having some sort of policies that can guide the path, and mainly helps with the process of reproduce sorry, I can't pronounce this right now. Being able to reproduce the models that you have trained, and the accountability. So if you really want to visualize that, it's some sort of checklist that you want to have in terms of guiding the life cycle, and then being able to audit this life cycle later. So later, we know how it has been developed, how it has been maintained, and who was responsible for which part, how to take people accountable for it, etc. So it's really a bigger umbrella that is supposed to guide and direct the path.
Mhm. And I assume there are also part of it is what happens after the model is in production, right? The operational.
Absolutely, absolutely. The operations after the model has been put into the introduction, which is a lot about maintenance and how to update the models after that.
Yep. And it's interesting. I mean, specifically in healthcare, part of the challenge is, once you have a model, how you actually deploy it in the clinical workflow, right? Because often you need to convince people to use it and understand it correctly and have that feedback.
Absolutely.
Have you done any work in that area?
So about the convincing part of the people how to use it and how to adopt to it, I think that is one of the challenges that healthcare is suffering from. That collaboration. I don't necessarily think it's a lot. It's about the convention part. Maybe it's a lot about the fear that comes with the terminology of artificial intelligence. If you really think about this terminology by default, we used to suffer from a lot of things that conveys that something is artificial. So think about it as an artificial sugar that you want to avoid. Anything artificial historically used to trigger some sort of bias in people's mind that if it is artificial, then it is something to be not necessarily welcoming. And let alone an artificial intelligence. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions around AI in terms of it's affecting people's job very negatively, as if human is going to lose their job market or let's say expertise, which is not correct. So a lot of the time, what happens is as soon as you start talking about AI governance or let's say AI policies or AI adoption, specifically in healthcare, I think there is some sort of resistance that comes with it, but with good intention. I think a lot of that needs to be just managed in terms of understanding human psychology and how people usually react when it comes to innovation and what it means to them. Does that mean that I'm going to lose my job? Does that mean that I'm going to be sent to some sort of new trainings? Does that mean that I need new skill set? How would I will be compared to other peers, etc.? So I think also as part of AI governance is some sort of enhancing the overall bar or level of the organization and setting people into the right path. That I think leaders here comes the role of the leaders of the organization. They can really do a great job in terms of bringing people on board and setting the directions in terms of this is where we're going and we want to be supportive of this type of initiatives and kind of protect people's fears in general, the type of fears that are kind of expected to come when something gets hype, when something gets momentum, when some new initiatives starts moving. You can expect that how human psychology is going to respond to that. And leadership has a great role. I think they can play a very effective role in terms of being able to manage that and calm that and kind of being able to move them through the storm. Yeah, that's what I think is possible for sure.
Yeah, change management is definitely big. Yes, big
Absolutely.
leadership role. Yeah, yes.
Yes,
So
change management.
yeah, so how else can leadership contribute to establishing AI governance in an organization?
I think there are other ways in terms of so since the concept by itself is a little bit heavy concept, right? So we don't want to and also it comes to the question of how do we manage the change and this change management. So it can start from a very similar type of procedures that people are comfortable with and leaders are comfortable with in terms of, let's say, forming some sort of AI governance team that includes various leaders from different sectors in organization. It can be part of a data engineering role, part of a data scientist role, an advanced analytics type of role, and also part of the IT leadership role, with the presence of, let's say, one advisory from anyone who wants to provide their input in terms of security or legal. So it can be a collaborative effort that can be done in collaboration with other leaders, and for the people in the higher, authorities to kind of set the overall direction that is going to help people at the lower level, join the movement and not move against that. I think that is a great help that people in the leadership role can provide. And then also kind of I would say giving some space in terms of understanding that this path is novel. If you look at the collaborative efforts that has been conducted specifically in Canada, leaders like Vector Institute, like Amy Institutes, they have a lot to offer, like CFAR. When you see where that development is, we're still at the very earliest stage of policy development and governance development. So it means that no one has actually paved the way in the past for the data scientists or AI leaders to have something and build on top of that. So a lot of it is also enabling the exploration that requires to be along the path and being able to support this movement to move forward rather than blocking it or limiting it. I think any leader who can support that movement is doing a great job.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I agree with you. In terms of policy, I think we are very, very early days. Because until the best practices are kind of established in the fields, and you can see good and bad example, it's very hard for regulators to try
Exactly.
to make definite recommendations. Yeah,
Yes.
and that's been the way in every industry. Yeah.
For sure.
So you do this work a lot. So based on your experience, what are the biggest challenges when it comes to successfully implementing AI governance in an organization?
Um, I think so. Since you asked about my personal experience, when it comes to governance, I think it triggers some sort of the word policy, and when it comes to policy, it triggers another words of like legal and security, and that's what I have observed a lot in organizations. I think if we could change that a little bit, because that is really a challenge. Like I don't think necessarily a policy equalize more locks. We definitely want more keys. So having that in mind, I think a policy in support of AI should have higher weights on the requirements of AI and higher weights on the requirements of supporting these teams. It does. I think we can kind of avoid translating that into necessarily a legal policy or security policy, because once we do that, if you really think about the history here, we do have a lot of very well established organizations that have been around for over 20 years, and these organizations are structured in a way that there is actually a very strong and powerful, let's say, security department or legal department. They have been there and they continue to be there, and they continue to evolve as well. When a new some sort of movement emerges, you usually end up being completely alone, right? And still the mindset and supports from security and legal is a traditional one in terms of finding the vulnerabilities and blocking that, right? Like that's what we do. As when I wear my information security hat, I think that way in terms of, now let's imagine that I'm a hacker. I want to hack to the system. So what security mechanisms I need to put in place to protect that or to avoid that? But I think when we talk about AI policy, we don't necessarily need that type of mindset. AI policy should be more about how can we be in support and help the implementation and adoption and being able to put this into practice in the organization, which means what are the current blocks and how we can provide more keys. Uh, I think if we can think about the policy a little bit from that perspective, it will help a lot of the adoption and support in the organization that is needed.
So can you give an example of that one such key that you've seen, seems to help unlock some progress?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So one of those keys is the concept of, let's say, open source shouldn't be necessarily a scary concept that people would avoid, or we want to put a proprietary software or proprietary to everything. When it comes to a lot of the production ready codes that data scientists usually write, a lot of that is open source, and there has been a lot of considerations already put into it in terms of making it transparent, enabling users to use it and
I think we may have a connection issue. Let's see if Parisa can rejoin quickly. Okay, everyone, I'm sorry. I think we have a connectivity issue. Probably need to revert at some point. What I would like to summarize, I would like to thank Parisa and call them. Thank her as well. If you have any questions on AI governance, you would like to talk with Parisa, the links and the contacts will be here on LinkedIn. I think I'd like to hear from you, and I think it would be useful to see how we can make progress on governance in general. So on behalf of everyone, I'd like to thank Parisa for your time, for sharing your learning about AI governance and leadership, and thank you all for joining as well. Thank you.